who decided to do a band. And Mark was a singer. He had been in a couple of bands. Jordy was playing guitar. Jeff had been in timpani in the school orchestra, so he became a drummer. And I could play Smoke on the Water on one string, so I became a bass player. Not only did it not really matter whether we were good or not, I also just didn't care. So we called ourselves the Slinkies, which we thought was sort of absurdist. And we said that we called ourselves Slinkies because we loved Twinkies, because we had a lot of junk food then. Then Mark went off to college, and we needed to get a new singer. I'm pretty sure the night that I went to go see the B-52s at the Bayou in 1979, that Nathan was there, and I ended up hanging out with him and asked if he wanted to sing in the band. And that's how the Teen Idols started. We played our first show in December of '79.
I was doing, we were doing in the basement what, the records I were buying was doing, and then to, be able to share it with people, I was just excited.
We would go see Skip Groff's record store yesterday and today, like almost every weekend. Skip had a record label, Limp Records, and he knew how to, I'll get you into a studio, I can help you get a record pressed. And when the Teen Idols really had songs, they have a bunch of songs. And all of a sudden, we're at some point, Ian and his bandmates come up with the idea we should make a record, which was very daunting, like a studio.
So then Skip said, I can take you to this studio called Inner Ear down in Arlington with this guy, Don Zentera.
When it came time to take the Teen Idols into the studio, Ian asked me, if I would help out, because they knew I had produced the Slicky Boys earlier, and in the early 70s had produced Pentagram. So they knew I knew a little bit about the studio. We had done the Slicky Boys record and some of the other early Limp things at Don Zentara's Inner Ear studio.
And he said, I'll bring down this band called the Teen Idols. They were young guys. They didn't know what to expect. And I certainly didn't know what to expect at all. Because when they started playing, it was almost like, oh my gosh, what is this?
At that time, there was, you can imagine the amount of interest there was in the world for an obscure teenage punk band that had broken up. So it wasn't as if people were clamoring to get the record. Having said that, Jeff's design of the cover was pretty bold. And I think that in terms of the punk world, it caught a few eyes. People were curious about it. But by the time the Teen Idols had come out, Minor Threat had already formed. So I was already working on that. And then SOA, they formed, they recorded 2 weeks after they played their first show. And then they recorded again in February, and then Henry was like, I'm going to put out a record. He didn't want to wait. He had the SOA record out a couple months later.
And I bought In My Eyes, and I thought it was just like incredible. Like I just thought it was just one of the most immediate and just kind of powerful records I had heard. And so I went back to the store and bought the first Minor Threat record, and I bought the SOA record, and I bought the Youth Brigade record, and then Legless Bull came out. And they, and within a year, there was a succession of these records that were on this label, and I got really sort of into it.
Ian and I and some others, a year after high school, moved across the river to Arlington, Virginia, and got a house, Discord house.
I met Jeff in high school, and we became pretty quickly very, best friends and pretty inseparable early on. There's certain aspects of our personalities that are like, when combined, are incredibly creative and constructive, but there's other aspects of our personality, those same things maybe at a different angle are really like, explosive,
We're both very stubborn. I think he can be rigid. We both good friends, love each other, but it's amazing that we're still working together because we're so different. We've definitely wanted to kill each other at many points over the years.
I think probably we were up each other's rear ends too much. We had the record label, we were in Minor Threat together, we were best friends, we lived in the same house, so we did a lot of time together.
So Discord, the group house, was where Discord was located, and Jeff had his room where he had his desk where he did all the graphic design. And then there was that funny little porch area that was like the office where Ian worked. So that was where Eddie Janney, who lived in that the room behind that office, worked doing mail order, and then I'd come and do mail order, and then Amy Pickering started doing mail order. So it was all in the house for years.
We put our first record out in December of 1980. And the first time that we actually paid ourselves was 1988.
They purposely priced their records as low as they possibly could, which was great. It meant a lot of people were able to buy the records, but it also meant that they had some tough times financially.
I'd send just money, like a $5 bill in an envelope. I never sent a check or anything. And I remember once they didn't have one record that I ordered, but the Flex Your Head had just came out, so they sent me that instead, and they just said, oh, okay, here's this new record, and you owe us $250 because it was $5 instead of $250. I thought that was really cool.
Also, the fact that they were doing it in this very homemade way, where the record covers were hand-folded and stuffed in little poly bags, and the fact that they were doing it that way, I think probably helped a number of other people to realize, like, oh, they don't want to put out my record, I'm going to put it out myself then. It's not that hard to do.
The reason that I'd say 99% of independent record labels are ever started is because you've got somebody in a band whose band isn't yet good enough to be on another label. So if you want that record to get out, you better put it out yourself.
The thing I got from Discord is that they were putting out their friends' music. Even though we did put out records by people from New York, it was like bands that we had played shows with or something that I became friends with. So I definitely liked that whole thing of, a group of friends releasing records together.
There was never a shortage of records coming out of DC in the 80s, and I think that largely had to do with the fact that people were inspiring one another to start their own bands, start their own record labels, book their own shows. It was really this time where you just felt like you were on the ground floor of something and you wanted to contribute in some kind of meaningful way.
Why do you think Boyd's legacy is still so strong? Is it because you were awesome?
It must be that. But I honestly have no idea whatsoever. I mean, we almost shouldn't have even been a part of that whole thing anyway, so that to me is the big anomaly, how we were even ever on Discord.
They seemed really, I guess, normal or straight guys. They didn't have a punk look entirely. And then the music they made, the energy that they not just exuded, like exploded, was insane. doing the split was really funny because nobody knew what the other guys were doing. You know, we didn't know what Void was going to come up with. They didn't know. You know, it just came together the way it came, and much like the music. I mean, we knew what they sounded like, but we just were completely. You know, we loved each other's bands and wanted to do something. And I think it was Ian. It was like, look, you know, you've got this recording. It's not quite long. You know, we could make a record with it, you know, an album, but it could also fit on one side. And they've got this thing that could fit on one side. And it was unimaginable then, certainly, that decades later, it's still a conversation, like which side's better.
But this one, it is like the missing link to, you know, this and everything else. It's such a perfect little moment, and it's beautiful that it died, you know. And that's the sort of thing that I think is also kind of amazing about DC bands is they didn't last long.
To me, the Faith were just like emblematic of just like, you know, the most core of hardcore coming out of DC. And they kind of totally lived up to it. And for me, these guys were like, you know, for me, it's like seeing Led Zeppelin. If you're a Led Zeppelin freak and seeing Led Zeppelin at Nebworth in '72 or something, I was like seeing the Faith at Great Gildersleeves.
I mean, there's always been critique of Discord because it's, you know, what Ian and Jeff wanted to release. I mean, they're documenting their little music scene.
There were definitely bands that ended up not fitting into the Discord model or becoming part of our stable or our circle of friends. And I can definitely see how some people would complain that you know, we were exclusionary and that we sucked the oxygen out of the scene, or, you know, and I can see how that would be very frustrating. But what were we supposed to do about that?
Part of the reason, part of the fuel for this label was people were making fun of us, and we felt excluded. So we're like, well, fuck it, we'll do our own thing. So we just did it. So why would I stop someone else from doing their own thing? I didn't want to own the scene here. I just wanted there to be a scene. DC only. I just want to do it that way. I just want to keep doing. I want to document this music here. Like, I just want it to be. I want people to say, like, if it's Discord, that's a DC thing. You know, some people might say, well, that was a bad business move. But I think if you exist for a third of a century, it's probably a good fucking business move.
I'm not going anywhere. I quit your fucking race. Stay! 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 Stay!
Ian is a very practical person. He doesn't like bells and whistles. He really doesn't. And so everything about Discord was somewhat austere. It's all very utilitarian, but easy to understand and very difficult to corrupt.